Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Freedom Filled Life podcast. I'm your host, Shay Brown, co-founder of the Bucket List Bombshells, where we serve women who are building, growing, and scaling a service-based online business. Now, today I am sitting down with my guest, Amy, and she is a brand strategist and designer based out of Florida. And Amy helps entrepreneurs and nonprofit organizations really share their brand story with the world. And she used to work for Disney. So we're going to get into that and her transition into her own design agency, which is called Author Brand Studio. And in 2018, she launched this business and since has helped her clients stand out from the crowd, scale their income, multiply their sales, and find freedom and fulfillment in growing, thriving brands, which is amazing. And so excited to have you here because this is the Freedom Filled Life podcast. So let's get into it. And before we dive into your full story and that transition, can you tell us a bit about the business you're running now and the services that you offer?
Yeah, thanks, Shay. So I help entrepreneurs share their story with the world through branding that represents the heart and soul of their business. So the way we do that is by understanding that branding isn't just your logo and colors, but it's who you are, what you do, who you do it for, why it matters to them. So my passion is really using that brand story and storytelling and strategy to get clear on all those things and then bring that heart and soul to life through your brand colors, your design, your logo, your fonts, etc. So I do that either through custom design or through thoughtfully pre-designed branding kits.
Yeah, amazing. I also saw that you're working with your husband in a photography business. Is that correct? Or
Yes,
yeah, can you tell
yes.
me a bit about that business?
Yeah, so that's fun. So I guess we are multi-passionate entrepreneurs, I guess you could say. So he is a data scientist by day, so he has a day job, and he actually got into photography through our dog. So I'm going to talk about my two corgis. I'm a corgi fanatic. So we got our first pup, Winston, in I think that was 2018 as well, and he started photographing our dog just for the gram because we're millennials, right? And so then he started to get inquiries about, hey, can you do our family photos? And so it kind of snowballed into weddings. And so now we do photography, wedding photography. He does that. I help with the branding. I just redesigned the website for that. It's called Author Made Photo, and so it's kind of like a sister brand to Author Brand Studio. So we have the name connection, and that's something that we both work in together. And it's really fun to be able to work together in that. But that's kind of our second hustle for both of us.
Amazing. So fun that you get to do that with your husband as well. So I love that when we have like little passion projects, side projects. Cass and I are always dreaming up so many different things, and it's really fun to pursue multiple things. And I'm sure your dogs are bringing you lots of joy, and it's kind of fun that they spark that.
For sure, for
I
sure.
love that. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about how you balanced your life and mental health through a really big career change, also in the midst of dealing with grief and uncertainty. And I am super grateful for you to be here and share that experience and with us today. So before we get fully into that, I'm just curious if you can share with us what you were doing for work prior to launching your business, and then let's get into that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I started my business, I graduated college in 2014, and immediately my first job was working at Disney down here in Orlando. So I started in internal learning and development, where we created really story-centric learning for what we call cast members, which are employees of Disney, and all the different subsidiaries of Disney as well. So anything from day one classes, day two training, all the way through executive leadership. That was really fun, such a great role. And then I moved in within Disney, I moved over to private events where we worked on conferences, conventions. I was a project manager and a designer, so I got to work with a lot of other great team members. So we did that for private like companies that would come to a conference at Disney, or VIP clients that wanted to spend a lot of money for a private event that was themed. So a lot of storytelling, a lot of branding, and as you know, Disney is they're very protective of their brand for good reason, and that's why they've become so successful. So that's really where I fell in love with branding and everything like that. And then I think it was the end of 2016, right before I got married, I lost my job at Disney due to budget cuts. So I went through a round of layoffs and got laid off. And so in between, so 2017, between 2017 and when I started my business in 2018, I worked at an ad agency downtown here in the city. So I was a project manager there. So I did that for a year before pursuing my own business.
Wow. And then what did that transition look like? What was the catalyst for starting your own business? It was you lost your job and now you started another job. And what was that catalyst for really pursuing your own design and brand studio?
Yeah, so 2017 really was kind of the year that my whole life kind of exploded. So I had just gotten laid off from Disney, which was my dream job, my dream career. I thought I would be there forever and be some big girl boss, like creative director kind of thing like that, which now I'm like, that is so not my personality now. But that was, 24-year-old Amy's personality back then. That's what I thought I wanted. And then, so 2017, my husband and I got married. That same summer, I lost my mom to breast cancer. And then 4 weeks after that, we found out my dad had a brain tumor and he had cancer all over his body as well, which was completely unexpected. So within basically a month, we were about to lose both of my parents. I'm very close, so very close to my dad. Thankfully, he's healthy, he's cancer free, so he's doing really well now. But that was a really hard time. And at that time, I was working the ad agency job, which was a really great supportive environment. My team, everyone was so kind with all the time off I had to take and working from home before that was a thing. So they were really great with me during that season. But I was just basically, showing up to work at 9 a.m. with a smile on my face every day. But I just didn't have that time or space to really process what I'd been through. And so it was just a lot of life events. We also bought a house during that time. So you name it, we went through a lot of major life events all in the space of maybe 6 months to a year. And so really things just kind of snowballed. And so by early 2018, my mental health had just completely collapsed. My physical health was right behind it. And I just knew I had to get some breathing room. So I called in PTO for a week. And my manager, she'd been through the loss of a parent as well from cancer. So she'd been so understanding the whole time, but I just called in all my PTO I had because I saw the writing on the wall. I knew I was probably going to step out and leave. And for the first time in about a year, I felt like I could breathe. I just remember sitting on my couch doing absolutely nothing. My husband was at work, and just like, oh my gosh, like I can breathe. I can actually start to process like what all just happened. And so I knew, all right, I have to put in my 2 weeks notice. And so I did that. It was really sad to leave, but sorry, that's my dog in the background. One of the two corgis barking. Um, but yeah, so I knew I had to leave that job and just heal and recover. And my thought was, well, I can't really function at a 9 to 5 job because I was like crying on the floor multiple times a day. And in the office bathroom. So that was obviously not ideal. So I wasn't really able to perform my work as well as I would like to. So I was like, well, I can't really perform at a 9 to 5, so I guess I'll freelance. So, but at that point, a lot of my design work, because again, design is so dependent on your portfolio and your skills and proving that you have the work you can do. So all of my work I had done at Disney had been under NDAs or for, internal learning and development or for private clients. And so obviously that information they don't want out there. So I had no portfolio. I had been out of college for a few years at that point. So all of my work was several years old. I had no real freelance clients. I had one person I did some on and off jobs for. So I basically had no clients, no portfolio, and here I was gonna start a design business. So that is maybe a lesson on what not to do, but that's just kind of how life took me. So that was what led to starting Author Brand Studio in 2018.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. What a journey. I think that there's so many stories of either getting fired or heartbreak or grief, losing someone that puts that sort of 9 to 5 lifestyle into perspective and is the catalyst to starting something that gives you that freedom, that fulfillment, that space. And we're going to get into your advice and perspective on mental health while juggling a business, because I know that, there's other challenges that do come with that as well. But the fulfillment that you want to get from your own work and doing things your own way. And thank you so much for sharing that. I'm really sorry that you had to go through all of that to get to this place that you are now.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, for those listening who may be struggling with mental health issues or grief, what advice would you like to share with them?
Yeah, that's such a great question because I think so many of us, especially as entrepreneurs, we are going to find ourselves in these ups and down seasons as we have our business. So, for me, there was a couple of things that really helped when I was going through this experience and things that I've learned along the way. The biggest thing for me when I was going through grief and mental health issues was finding something to anchor into. So for me, it was my faith in God. For others, it may be your religion, it may be family, your kids, your friendships, your community, future hopes and dreams, believing in something bigger that you want for your life or something that you're hoping will happen in the future. Knowing that there is a bigger purpose for what you're going through and that you're not going through it alone, that you have people around you and that you are going to get somewhere better in the future is really the only thing that helped me get through that in the moment and really stay afloat and just push forward into, yeah, just finding healing through the other side. So then on a practical level too for my business, really the best step that I took was leaving my day job, and to be clear, my husband was working, so we had dual income. So I did have his income to fall back, but he really was not making enough to support us both. Like it wasn't just, oh, a casual decision. It was really, I remember we bought this house a few months before I left my job, and I remember I wanted to quit so bad because that was back in November. My mental health was still so bad back then in November 2017. That would have been 2017. And he was like, "You can't quit. We have to sign the mortgage." I was like, "Okay, you're right." So we honestly, on paper, it was really a bad decision to leave my day job, but he and I both knew that my health and mental health and wellness had to come first, and that was a priority to us both. And so I'm really grateful that he was on board with that as well. But we really had to just make a hard decision and say we have to put health first and then figure it out along the way. So getting that, doing whatever I needed to do to get stress off my plate, to get that breathing room, to free up my time to go to my doctor's appointments and go to counseling and things like that. And I honestly, I watched a lot of TV during those first few months. That's all I remember is going to the doctor, going to counseling, and watching TV. I think that's pretty much all I did. I did a few odd projects here and there. And that's okay. That's what I needed for that season because I was working on rebuilding myself back, and it didn't come with the hustle at the same time. There's an ebb and flow, and that's something I'm learning again. Just I've learned over and over in my business that there are ebbs and flows, and so you really just need to. My advice would be to really just recognize where you're at and say, hey, it's okay if the business needs to take a step back. It's okay if maybe some of those dreams and goals need to be put on pause, or maybe look differently because. At the end of the day, that is my number one priority is health and wellness and making sure that I am a whole person because that does allow me to show up in my business, show up for my family, my friendships, my community, the people around me. It really starts and ends with that. And so finding something bigger to anchor into, number one, was my most important thing, but then also just recognizing that season I was in and then making those changes that needed to be done, even when they were really hard to make.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I just think that there is such a pull now towards the anti-hustle culture as well
Mhm.
within, not just within climbing the career ladder, but I think in our entrepreneurial space, I'm
Mhm.
seeing a shift. And I think that shift is coming from us getting burnt out or going through something and realizing that we need to take a break. We need to give ourselves grace and we need to structure our businesses and companies differently to allow more space for the freedom that we set out to accomplish within our business, within our businesses. It's just something I'm seeing come up so much in my coaching with my coaching clients and my mastermind clients. And so I love that you recognize that from the beginning and something that I know that you brought that in while growing your business. So I know you've grown to past the six-figure mark, which is amazing, such an accomplishment in such a short time. And I was hoping you could share with our listeners how you achieved this with that work-life balance mentality guiding you.
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that because I think honestly that's one of my favorite topics to talk about. I could talk about this all day, but then I also look at my life and I'm like, oh, I don't feel like I've done a great job of it. So I've tried, but again, I think we're all learning as we go, right? And just learning what works for us. And again, it's been ebbs and flows for me as well too. So In the beginning, because I started my business from a place of I need to prioritize health and wellness first, I came in with really clear values and boundaries of what I would and would not do. So that health has always been for my business, that's been my number one priority is this business will not run my life. Now, have I adhered to that value every single day in the last 5 years? No, but I'm doing pretty good. It's been a pretty good try. It's at least been helpful to realize that. And then when I get off the rails, my husband's like, "Hey, remember when you said this?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I need that reminder." But that even just having that as the guiding, the North Star, even when I veer off path, it's always leading me back to, oh yeah, this was my priority. This was my value in starting my business. And so one thing that's looked like was immediately I set up boundaries with my clients. So I immediately said to myself, hey, I'm not going to work nights and weekends unless I actively choose to. And I have done that a few times from time to time, but that's because I choose to, because I want to get ahead on a project, or I'm really invested in, I think it was working on my husband's website, or I guess our website. I just say it's his, but because he's the photographer, but the photography website, I just redid the whole website a few weeks ago. And so I definitely worked extra hours on that, but I was having fun. And that was something that we both really wanted to see done. But so I pretty much set that boundary though. I don't make myself available to clients after 5 p.m. or on weekends or on my days off. So that's been a really great boundary, setting that expectation with clients up front. Also organizing, automating, optimizing parts of my business as well was really helpful. So organizing invoicing. I know for a lot of us in the creative space, like photographers, event planners, designers, web designers, getting invoices can be such a consume a lot of our time. And so having that be optimized. So I rarely have to chase down a client for a payment anymore because that's all been systematized. Hiring my first team member as well, even before I really felt like I needed her, that was such a leap of faith, but it really felt like something I needed. And I went in with this mindset that even if it frees up 30 minutes a week or an hour a week, it's still worth it. And it really was. So I was able to grow without really sacrificing so many hours of my time because I had extra help that I could contract and outsource and invite into my team people who are more talented than I was in certain areas, or could even just be an extra set of hands to help carry the load. So those often really helped in the early days, and then throughout my business as well too. More recently, I typically do experience a lot of ebbs and flows. Again, maybe that'll be a theme of this episode is those ebbs and flows, but I really do experience those. So typically spring is really busy for me. A lot of people just kind of pop out like a groundhog and yeah, and they're like, oh, time for a new brand. It's a spring. Or some of my bigger nonprofit clients are like, all right, it's time for our annual report to get done, donor reports, things like that. So a lot of times spring is really busy for me, and then summer, fall is a lot slower. So in the spring, this is not a great question to ask me in the spring because my answer would be I am failing. At least in years past, that's how it looked. I would sacrifice my routines or my personal time to get work done. But it also was kind of necessary because I knew that most of my income for the year was coming from that busy season, and that summer and fall would be a lot slower. So then in summer and fall, I would more intentionally work on my own business, or, work on my own systems or a new lead magnet, or even just maybe spend more time, maybe kick off work early in the afternoons and do my creative hobbies or things like that. So kind of taking advantage of the busy seasons and saying, hey, I'm going to work a little bit harder for a short time because I know the reward is coming on the end of that. And then when things are slow, kind of taking it a little bit easier too. Another great thing that I did, I'm such a huge fan of it, was about a year ago, I guess a year and a half now, I transitioned to a 4-day work week. That was something I've been wanting to do forever. I feel like in the entrepreneur space, we hear about 4-day work weeks all the time, and everybody's like, "Oh, 4-day work week is like the new gold standard, right?" And it was something I had dreamed about, but I thought, "Oh, I could never do that. What if my clients need me? What if I lose a business because I'm not available on a certain day?" So finally, I was like, I just have to try it. So I did a little trial run around the holidays. So the few clients that were still around before Christmas, because most people kind of shut down for the holidays, either working on their own businesses or for family time. So the few people I still had for the holiday season, those 4 weeks before Christmas, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to tell them I'm not here on Fridays for the holidays. And guess what? Nobody cared. Literally nobody cared. And so I was like, okay, we're going to do this. So then in January of 2022, I made the change official. And I think what really helped was I communicated that openly to my clients. I set that expectation up front. I didn't say why. I didn't need to explain it or tell them what I was doing with that time off. I just said, hey, studio's closed on Fridays and we will not delay your project because of it. We'll actually, if we have a Friday deadline, we'll get it done on Thursday. So it's a win-win, and we will respond on Mondays. And I put it in my email signature and everything. So I think that communication, that open communication with my clients. So if anyone listening is working with clients or customers and it really feels like they need your involvement, that communication and setting those expectations can be huge. That can allow you to live the life you want to live, but then also setting that communication up front so nobody's caught off guard and everybody just feels like they're really being taken care of. And so it feels like a win for both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, what a fantastic answer. There's like so many things I want to touch on because I'm like, I love the trajectory of how you started out. You got those boundaries, you had that automation in place, you hired your first team member, take that load off because you were building your business with the kind of freedom and fulfillment mentality. And you were not letting your business run you, like the way that you speak about your growth. It's very much you are running your business. And I love that mentality. And then you moved into like the growth stage where you were seeing the ebbs and flows. And I love that you saw that. And instead of piling on more work during the ebb period, you actually gave yourself that space because you had the confidence and the comfortable, we all forecast whatever we want to make. You were making what you wanted to make and you weren't striving for that kind of hustle culture or that like, I need more, it's never enough. And because I've been in this place where and I've seen this very much happen in the growth stage of business, just needing more and more and more and not really understanding where is enough and where is that balance. And I think you did that beautifully as well. And then moving into your scaling, you're taking 4-day work weeks. And I love that because I'm seeing my clients in our mastermind start to do that. That seems to be, like you said, the new goal, the new gold standard that people want. And I just think that is
It's
such a
the best.
beautiful,
It's the
yeah,
best.
yeah, such a
Yeah.
beautiful trajectory that you were on, and you held so clear to your standards, your boundary, your communication, and you run your business versus letting it run you. So thank you so much for sharing that advice. I really think that was just spot on.
Yeah, that's a very glowing sum up. I
Of
wish it was as
course.
perfect as that. I do want to make clear, I'm not perfect. Like I have definitely fallen into the entrepreneur hustle, more
Absolutely.
mindset. It's just ebbs and flows, but I think having that North Star, every time I've veered off from that and just having that North Star of, hey, boundaries, wellness, putting myself first and not, like you
Mm.
said, exactly, not letting the business run me. It always brings me back on track eventually. Sometimes sooner than later, sometimes later than sooner, but yeah, for sure.
I love that. So another question kind of following on the 4-day work week is I know that a lot of us see productivity hacking, time hacking, and this is like so promoted in the entrepreneur world. And also the 4-hour work week seems to be having a comeback. So I'm curious, you've moved to a 4-day work week, which now seems to be the thing that is bringing people a lot of joy and fulfillment. What is your opinion or perspective on the concept of a 4-hour work week, or this concept in general of just working so little and having your business kind of run on its own?
Oh man, that's such a great question. I feel like you should ask my husband instead because he's Mr. Systems and Processes and Optimization, and I'm just such an organic, go with the flow person. I actually do thrive with parameters though, like systems and routines, because they keep me in check from being just all over the place. So I think that's such a fun question and such an interesting topic too. And I could talk all day about this as well. I think the idea of working less And so that's even where I'm at right now. I'm actually trying to be a little bit more efficient with how I work. So, a lot of these weeks I work 3 days instead of four sometimes. And maybe Mondays I just check emails, make sure nothing's on fire, and then go about and take care of some things around the house and do some creative hobbies. So that's kind of the season I'm in right now, where I'm just enjoying it, taking things a little bit slower. But then I've also found, which I think is the point of the 4 day or 4 hour work week. I haven't read that book, but I've heard that concept of trying to optimize as much work as possible in a small amount of time. And so I do find I am way more productive. And I would find in busy seasons, or sorry, in slow seasons in my business where I wasn't as busy, I would, if I didn't have anything really intentional I was trying to do, because I'm not that productive of a person. I feel like I think I can talk a good game about working on my own business, but when push comes to shove, sometimes I'm just burned out of hustling all spring. And when fall comes around, I'm like, no, I want to just take things slow and burn off some steam a little bit. So during those times, I really find that I cannot be very productive, because then I'm kind of sitting around the computer for 8 hours a day. Well, I should work on something. Well, I have a lot of things I want to be doing, but what do I start doing? But then in the last couple weeks, when I've been condensing my work into maybe 3 days instead of four or even five as I used to, then I'm being a lot more intentional with that time. And so I think that is a really interesting concept of, you're going to be more productive when you do condense it, because it narrows your focus. And then it has this mentality of, okay, I only have these few days to work. And then there's a reward of, but I get to take Friday off and I get to do my sewing or whatever it may be for anyone listening out there. For me, it's usually sewing or painting or something like that. So I'm more productive by condensing my time. But I think to really make it a go without, I don't know how easy it is. Let me say that. I don't know how easy it is to have the best of all the worlds unless you really are super good at optimizing. And I think you have to get the business to the place. It takes a lot of growth, which comes with sacrifices at the front end, to get your business to the place where you aren't sacrificing income and you are only working a reduced amount of time. And that's something that we are hoping to do with the photography studio. And thankfully, my husband's running that ship, because he, like I said, he is Mr. Systems and Processes. We're such a great team because he makes up for all my weaknesses. But for me, with Author Brand Studio, it hasn't quite looked like that. There's been a lot of things I have been able to automate, so that I have been able to reach six figures without, working 80 hours a week. So I have been able to do the best of both worlds a little bit, but there's also come with some sacrifices too with income. And so for me, it's recognizing that ideal lifestyle, working 4 days a week or 4 hours a week or whatever it may be, is more important to me than the income I could be getting if I worked 40, 80 hours a week. And that's a concept that my former coach and huge inspiration of mine, Nisha Woolery, if you don't know her, check her out. She's great. She has a lot of great advice for anyone out there listening. But she has always kind of said that concept. So to give credit where credit's due, it's not my idea, but she has often said with her business that she's sacrificed some growth in order to have the lifestyle that she prefers. And so by choosing to run a more slow, intentional, mindful business, I think that sometimes there will come sacrifices, but it's worth it in the end if that's your priority, which it is for me. So that's not saying it's not possible. I definitely think it is possible. And again, we are trying to do that with the photography studio, build that to be a more automated process and hire a team and all that. But for me with the branding studio, it really has looked like some seasons I hustle and I work more and I get that benefit on the other end and make some sacrifice of my time and energy. But then I also get to enjoy the benefits of, hey, I did build this to a place where I can maybe step back or slow down or enjoy slower seasons. But then also recognizing, hey, I just have to be content with what is enough. What does my family need? What do I need to make? And to say, I'm more than willing to sacrifice whatever exponential income of working 80 hours a week, because who am I going to be in that process? Like I would be stressed out, burned out. So I think there's sometimes can be trade-offs, and I think it can be done. I think it has to be done very intentionally and strategically, but I think there are going to be sacrifices one way or the other, and I think that's actually really healthy for us.
Yeah, I absolutely love that perspective. It's something that Cass and I have definitely learned over the past few
Mhm.
years, and changing that structure, but knowing there is some small sacrifices in terms of it's always kind of a balance between time freedom and money freedom. And you
Yeah.
still want to be able to have, like you said, enough or even more than enough.
Mhm.
And defining what that is for you, like really getting real with yourself, like taking away like what you see on social media or what you see someone who's quote unquote ahead of you, and stop defining what is enough from that perspective and start defining it from your perspective. Take a look around at your life. What type of lifestyle do you want to live? You simplify your life and you realize, great, what I'm making is more than enough. I'm super content. I'm super happy. And I can kind of maintain for a while. And maybe it also is in a season where you're not feeling as creative, and that's cool. Go, and what you were saying, go do your hobbies. That's probably going to inspire you. Go spend time with family, friends, and you don't have to go do those things from that perspective of like, okay, I want this to inspire me and now I need to
Yeah.
create more from that space, because I'm really bad for that. For every time I learn a new skill or have a hobby, I always think, how can I monetize this? And I really had to, it was really like started becoming very anxiety inducing. I didn't
Yeah.
want to learn anything new because my brain would immediately, because that's who I am, want to monetize it. And so I think that that's just such a great perspective to have, that yes, there may be, and when we say sacrifice, it's not like that big of a sacrifice. It's like what you
Yeah, for
decide.
sure.
It's not like these, high volumes of money that you're sacrificing or high
Mhm.
amounts of time. It's finding that balance between the two. How much free time do you want to have, and how much money do you want to make? And I can tell you from working with my mastermind members and my clients in coaching, there are so many unique ways to get you onto the path that you want when it comes to time
Yeah.
freedom and money freedom. And that's really what I like to focus on now, because that's something that I had to achieve in my own within my own self when I was reaching a precipice of burnout. And yeah, I love your answer. So I just wanted to kind of put my 2 cents on that as well. But I think it can look
Awesome.
so unique. And I definitely think a lot of what you said in terms of automating, again, boundaries, again, communication, all of those skills that you've honed is what allows you to really figure out what that means for you in terms of the balance. And it sounds like also just really having that belief in the higher power and having that mindset tools and that work that you've done to say, I don't want this, I want this. Like you seem very clear on what you want and what you don't want. And that, especially with social media, is really hard to do sometimes. And I just, if anybody can take advice away from this podcast, I would say take that advice and figure out what you want, and send me an email because I can get you there, or we can, because like you just figure out what you want. And I guarantee there's a path for that freedom, that fulfillment. Again, if you want to live simply, if you want to live luxury, if you want to live, in the forest for half the year. And like there's just so many cool ways of doing things once you figure out what you want. And that's what I love about business.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. 100%.
yeah. Yeah. So I know that you own a branding studio, and I kind of wanted to get your opinion, and this is shifting gears a little bit, but for our service-based business owners who are really trying to stand out using their branding, before I let you go, I really want to know, what advice would you give them to really cut through the online noise? Like we said, there's a lot going on online. How can we use branding to really stand out in the online world?
Yeah, that's such a hard topic, and I think a question everybody wants the answer to.
Hmm.
And I'll share this from what we're doing through the photography studio, the one that my husband and I run together. So, backing up a little bit, one of my biggest inspirations as a creative, when I was a teenager, I really wanted to be a costume designer. And so, one of my favorite inspirations was someone named Adrian. He was a costume designer for Hollywood in the 1930s. I love old movies. And he had one really great quote that's always stuck with me through every creative endeavor I've had, and it's sound one note truly. So what he meant was that every costume he designed should sound one note or play one note. So if it was the villain, he would dress her in a sleek, shiny, cold-looking fabric. Or if the main character was rebellious, she would wear like a hat to represent independence and individuality, things like that. And so that idea of being known for one thing, and you see that concept throughout marketing and entrepreneur advice, like Simon Sinek's Start with Why. Essentially he's saying be
Great
known
book.
for one thing. And that as I found working with clients is just so true. There's so many people, there's a million people all doing the same thing. How do you get to be how do you stand out from that? And so taking the example of our photography studio, so previously, my husband had been branding. We had been branding. I say him, but we've been branding the photography studio because I was obviously the one who did his first website and helped with branding the first go round when we began a few years ago. So we just started branding as, local wedding photographer, videographer, basic. Had some pretty basic website copy, nothing really show-stopping. Kind of sounds like everybody else. And then in the past few years, though, he's really noticed he gets a lot of inquiries for smaller wedding packages. So maybe 2 hour or 4 hour shoots maximum. And I think we can all relate, as entrepreneurs, service-based entrepreneurs, like you mentioned, we all want the high ticket, shiny clients. And then the clients that don't have as much budget kind of get overlooked or given the budget. I know none of us do that actually. Like we're all good people, but that kind of seems to be the mindset a little bit. It's all about get the 10K client. And so in the wedding space, it feels the same way. Book the 10K wedding and the 8K wedding. And then, oh, if somebody wants like only needs 2 hours of coverage, well, just give them like the cheap deal. And so, and we had a small wedding as well too. And so we were really able to hone in into our personal brand story and say, hey, we believe that even though your wedding is only 2 hours, it's equally worthy of white glove service. We know that you have unique needs when planning a small, intimate wedding. And so we really changed that brand positioning to we want to be the go-to brand wedding photographer, videographer for small, intimate weddings in our area. And so really trying to stand out from all the other amazing photographers in the area. There's so much talent in Orlando, so many other great people. But how do you stand out, especially in a field that is very crowded like photography? And so really honing in on that one thing is really recognizing what you want people to say about you when they refer you. So for us, it was we don't want people to think when people think wedding photographer, I need a wedding photographer, they're going to think of, I mean, we have multiple friends who do wedding photography, let alone everyone else out there that we don't know. And so we decided we don't want to just be known as wedding photographers. We want to be known as the small, intimate wedding photographer. So getting more specific on what you offer. So that may be niching. Maybe you offer a really unique service or product, getting really clear. Maybe you do web design. Okay, great. Everyone else does web design. Maybe you specifically do e-commerce web design for children's brands. That's super specific. So then when somebody is starting a children's brand and they need a website, which of course they do, they're going to think of you because you are the go-to for a very specific thing. And so when it comes to branding is really helping our clients identify that. Sometimes they come in knowing that. A lot of times they don't, or it may not be differentiating by product or service, but by their message and their story. And so it's really sitting down and working with them and being like, what is the one thing we want people to identify you as? What do we want them to say about you? What do we want them to know about your business? And then how can we create that into, because they may already know the answers to that, they just don't know how to articulate it or how to message it, market it, brand it. And so then it's taking that information and then saying, how can we make this into a relatable story or a message that really resonates with people and connects with them so they say, oh my goodness, that is the perfect person, or that is the exact product I've been looking for, because it not only fills a need that they have, but it speaks to some kind of deeper meaning in their life or some shared value or something. So really identifying what is that one thing you want to be known for. And again, like I said, it could be niching. It was the photography example I use as a great case study for that. Or it could be, what is kind of that core message, for you guys, it's that freedom filled life, right? And so you're being known for that one thing, helping entrepreneurs achieve that freedom. And so people are going to think of you because that is what's been anchored in their minds. And it really takes a lot of intentionality to anchor that one idea into the minds of your audience and customers. And so that's what branding is really all about, is mining deep into the depths of the heart and soul of your business to grab that one idea, bring it to the forefront, really polish it off, make it shine, and make it really appealing to people. Our clients already know this. It's just they don't know how to articulate it very well, or they don't really know what to do with it. And so we take that and we help bring that to the surface. But that is kind of, again, that one thing. I guess the one thing is the one thing I would leave you with, right? Is get clear on that one thing that you offer, that one thing you want to be known of, and learn how to put that forward in a really appealing, connective, emotional way for your audience. And that's what helps a business and a brand stand out.
Yeah, so great. Thank you so much for that extra insight. And I know that on this podcast, we've been talking a lot about your growth and kind of that path and how you've built your business. So I am curious, if you had to pick just one thing, what do you think has contributed the most to your business growth and success?
Honestly, it's just been perseverance. It's been
Mm,
sticking with it. It makes for a really great headline to say I hit six figures by the time I turned 30. What you
mm,
don't hear is that my first 2 years in business, I could have made more income working part-time at Starbucks. Nothing wrong with
mm.
that. It actually sounds like a great job, but there's just so much behind the surface. So I really, number one was I had to persevere and stick with it. I know you said one thing, but I'll throw in another one as well.
Go for it.
The second thing I think that really turned the tide for me was finding my niche of branding. So again, that one thing that I just shared. So I went from just trying to get any kind of graphic design work I could get under the sun to really identifying, hey, my passion, my skill set, my biggest strength is this branding and this kind of storytelling through branding. And so I want to be known for that. I want to really specialize in that. And that really took off. I was involved in a really great online community at the time. And I went from being a nobody to kind of being one of the go-to brand designers. So if anybody posted in this private group, hey, I'm looking for a brand designer, all of my clients would come out of the woodworks and immediately think of me. And then I would be able to say, yes, I do brand strategy and branding versus, yeah, I do any kind of design you need. And so
Mm,
really, I think finding that one thing, that niche, it doesn't have to be a niche by audience. We hear about that a lot. For me, I am starting to niche into audience more, but for me, it's usually been more so niching by that one thing or by that one specialty that I offer and kind of standing out from other people. So I think, again, not to give the cliche, oh, I just answered that question already, but that really was probably the one big thing that contributed to my growth in the early years. But the underlying one honestly was the perseverance part and just sticking with it and plugging ahead.
I love that. Yeah, I love the word perseverance. I think that was one of my word of the years, like years ago. And it's just,
Oh, that's good.
yeah, I really like that word. So thank you for sharing that with us. And as we're wrapping up here, I have one more question. I like to ask everybody this question, but I feel like the whole conversation actually answered this question. I'm still going to ask it to you just in case you have a different answer. But how has starting your own business led to more freedom and fulfillment in your life?
I love that question. Gosh, I mean, I can't imagine being who I am right now at 31 with my priorities I have right now and without my own business. I couldn't do it. Honestly. It's been so great. So I'll try to keep it short because I could go on and on about this. But I know we've talked about the growth that I've seen, and there has been a lot of hustle to get to that point, although I've been able to keep most of my boundaries and preserve some wellness in my life. But there's been a lot of growth to get to that six-figure mark. But now
Hmm.
in 2023, I really went into this year thinking that I want to turn my attentions a little bit more inwards towards my home life, my personal life. And so having my own business has given me that freedom to kind of pull the lever back a little bit. And yes, that does mean stepping back my income that I'm taking back this year. But the beautiful thing is when I'm ready to push back again and to get more, roll up my sleeves a little bit more, lean into working more, then I can do that. I don't have to ask my boss, hey, I want to go down to part-time hours, or hey, can I have less responsibilities? Or I don't have to quit a job and hope I can find another job. I don't even have to really worry about my career stagnating because I know that, okay, I can focus on whatever season I'm in and take things slow, or I can change my mind tomorrow and say, you know what, full steam ahead. Like, I changed my mind. Let's just go all in and try to hit 6 more figures. I don't know, that'd be a lot, but that's really the beauty of being able to recognize. I can recognize whatever season I'm in, and so I have had a really great past couple years, and then this year's just looking a lot different. But yet this year is also more fulfilling in a lot of ways because I am able to focus on more of my priorities that I have in this season of life. My creative hobbies, my home,
Mm.
my pets, or my marriage, family, things like that. I am able to kind of choose my own adventure, if you will, and really be able to make those choices and know that everything's okay. I don't have to ask permissions to take a step back or to take a step forward and to make the next advancement. And so that does bring a lot of freedom of knowing that I am the one in the driver's seat. I'm not dependent on my bosses, my managers to approve time off or to approve a new work schedule or to risk getting fired because I want to change my lifestyle. I That brings a lot of freedom. And then obviously fulfillment too. I love the flexibility of it as well. Even when things are busy, and I'm booked out with clients, sometimes I have slow days or like yesterday, I just checked emails and responded and wrapped up some projects for a couple hours. I was done by 4, and I was like, you know what? I've got some sewing I was working on. That's my one of my creative hobbies. I'm gonna go do some sewing. So I put on a movie and did some sewing for a couple hours before dinner. And it's like, who gets to do this? This is amazing. And so I love that I get to really focus on those other areas of my life that do fill me up. Again, my creative hobbies are a huge one for me. I really feel it if I don't get time to be creative every day outside of my business. And so that's a huge one where I can prioritize and say, okay, I'm going to stop work an hour early today, or I'm going to spend this evening. And so and then it also frees up that time and mental energy because I'm not worrying about, am I going to get laid off, or, what's my boss going to think? And it really just frees up that mental space for me to be my own person and to really pursue those priorities. But yeah, just kind of going with the changes. And like I said, I'm the kind of person that I need a lot of margin in my life. I can't juggle a lot of plates. And so having my own business allows me to be that kind of person and to say, hey, it's okay. I don't have to do everything under the sun. I can live a little bit slower pace of life when I need to and when I choose to by my own decision. And that's okay. And I absolutely could not be doing that if I didn't have my own business. So it's been the last thing I expected to do in my 20s was to start my own business, but it's been so good. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Oh, wow. What a beautiful answer. Thank you so much. It's one of my favorite questions. I always love the answers that we receive. And so, Amy, where can our listeners connect with you after this podcast?
Yeah, so my website is authorbrand.studio. I'm also on Instagram. I've not been very frequent there recently, but I still check it from time to time. So you can send me a DM, say hey, let me know that you heard the episode, and hopefully share with me something that stood out to you. I'm on Instagram at authorbrandstudio.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I super appreciate all of the wealth of insight that you gave us in terms of balancing our mental health, our business through different seasons of life and through starting, growing, and scaling. And it's just amazing the things that you've accomplished. So thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thanks for having me, Shay.
Of course, and thank you to everybody listening. And I will see you in another episode of the Freedom Filled Life podcast. Bye for now.